We tested out the new killer from the Stranger Things Chapter 2 on the DVD PTB. He is called the First. He is a 4.4 speed killer with a 32 meter terror radius, and his powers are another mix of things similar to Springtrap. As for his perks, I will cover them in another video along with the survivor perks. Now, let's go over his powers. He has two active powers. The first we have is this tunnel kind of ability, traveling the underverse. You dive into the ground and you move around as what I like to call a puddle, and you are undetectable and travel faster during this mode. However, you are quite noisy. So you travel around, find someone to target, you tunnel up to them and pop out of the ground. It takes a bit of time, so you have to plan this. Assuming you can get a hit with this, it will give a survivor 2 tokens, and 2 tokens is enough to turn clock mode on, what I like to call clock mode. Whilst in this mode, your powers can do damage to survivors. A problem I came across when playing my first game is I went into puddle mode and I went towards survivors and I tried to burst out underneath a grandfather clock, and I believe that's what locked me into puddle mode, and I had to play the game as a puddle and I couldn't get out of it, attack survivors, so I had to just roam around as a puddle. Hopefully that'll get fixed. It seems when props or chests, etc. are in the way, that's when it kind of bugs out. Whilst in puddle mode, you will pass through vaults and pallets and will be unaffected by stuns as well. His other active power is mid-ish ranged AoE vine attack. You can have decent control of where it pops up, and it does take a bit of time for it to pop up, so you have to plan ahead. With both these powers, you have to kind of zone or predict where survivors are going to be, so it is an interesting gameplay mechanic, and is not a dash killer for once. If you get hit by this vine attack, you get 1 token, and if you're in clock mode, you take damage like the previous ability. When playing against and as the killer, I found it fairly fair. I found I was getting hits as the killer by zoning people and predicting where they would be, and as survivor I was able to dodge them as the timing was reasonable enough. From observation, clock mode starts when a survivor gets 2 tokens added to them. From what I've seen, 1/4 of the clock cannot be turned back, so based on observation, that is a minute or 60 seconds worth of clock. Based on that, I assume that the rest of the clock is the same, therefore you could get a maximum of 4 minutes or 240 seconds from that. However, it is very unlikely you'll ever reach that. For survivors to get rid of the 3 minutes that are able to be rewinded, it takes about 20 seconds at a clock, and you stand there listening to music. Originally, I thought you would have to go to a clock for each quarter, but that doesn't turn out to be the case. Whilst I think it's generally fair, I do feel like either splitting it between clocks so there's more teamwork encouraged, or having a trade-off for being the one sitting listening to the headphones, because eventually I feel like survivors are just going to know to do it, and then there's no point in having that timer. Essentially, you may as well just have the 60 seconds. That said, I wouldn't mind per se having just the 60 seconds. It just seems like a pointless mechanic if you have this clock thing without some sort of trade-off, that is. Another observation I made, there is another Mori based on certain conditions, for example like Sadako's or Pyramid Heads. The conditions from what I've seen is if a survivor has 4 tokens, is injured, and they are on death hook in clock mode, then when they are hit with vines, they will stay in place and float like Max does in the show, and then the first can come over and Mori that survivor. I am not sure yet what happens if the clock mode ends. I suspect though maybe it stops you freezing in place, but I could be wrong. I did need to do more testing. The animation is a different animation as well, and is quicker than the default Mori. So for the PTB, I put this basic build on, I put on Discordance because the new survivors have teamwork perks and it's just nice to know where people are on generators. I put Oppression on as well to suppress other generators. However, with the add-on I'm using, I've found I wasn't using it that much, but it's nice to have still. I have Knockout, which when a survivor drops a pallet and they run a certain distance from it, it gives them hindrance of 5%, which can help with predicting where survivors are going to be. If you can slow them down, it gives you that bit of leeway. And the last thing I got was Forced Pennant. I was testing this to see how it would work in the blast mode that you do, and it does seem to punish one of the survivors. So it might be nice to have an extra injured survivor. Other perks I would consider running with this character are ones that give you aura reading in Chase. So Franklin's Demise along with Weaver Attunement could be a good option, as you could get the hit with the survivor to drop the item and then you'll be able to see where they are behind the loops. The downside is you won't be able to get the tokens on the first hit. However, later on in the game that might pay off. He also has an add-on that allows you to break pallets when you come out of the ground. If you use that along with Thwack, you might get some aura reading on that too. Lethal Pursuer is also a good choice. It extends aura reading perks and add-ons, as well as showing where the survivors are from the start, so you can have a head start on bursting under them and getting into clock mode very fast.